I'm going to tell you the story of where this songwriter came from, how he came to be. So I grew up in McLean, Virginia. I was a kind of happy, outgoing, busy, skinny kid. My favorite things were stealing lumber from the construction sites, building tree forts, teasing my three sisters, playing touch football in the backyard, and avoiding Ace Tracy, who was the neighborhood bully. But my songwriting trip started when I was about 12 or 13, I think, as best as I can recall. And I was up in one of these illegal tree forts, attempting to figure out what I was going to do with the rest of my life. It was important that particular day to know, what my trajectory was. So I was really kind of focused on this. I heard this voice that said, "You'll become a songwriter. You will write 2 pop hits that'll be on the radio, and you'll live on royalty checks for 75 years. That clear, that distinct. And I went, wow, okay. I'm liking it. So, this made sense. It kind of fit in. There had been a lot of music in my life growing up. We played everything on the hi-fi, from the Kingston Trio and Glenn Miller to the Music Man and Tchaikovsky. And I was surrounded by music, and so this idea felt good. But there was one specific reason that particular day that I thought that this was doable. There was a song in hot rotation on the radio that went like this. Oh, Eddie rocks in the treetop all day long, hopping and a bopping and a singing. I won't sing the whole thing, but you know Rockin' Robin, right? And from a musician standpoint, I looked at that song and I went, 3 chords, repetitive melody, lyrics by a 4th grader, big hit, how tough can this be?
And you're in a treehouse.
Yeah, this is 13-year-old logic, but it made sense. So I climbed down out of the tree feeling pretty cocky, like this was feasible. Oh boy. Well, I kept the epiphany to myself. I thought, this is just, it's so perfect in my head, the dream, the fantasy, and that I just, didn't tell anyone. Well, I got into high school, and I played music. I had a band in high school, much like the Scepters. My band was called the Wombats. And we did the sock hops and the fraternity parties, and I made money, and it was all good. But at 18, I was restless. I needed some new scenery, so I went from Virginia to Oregon, and off to Lewis and Clark College. So my first day of school, I went down to the music department, Evans Auditorium. I walked in the door, feeling pretty, pretty optimistic. And I said, "Hey, I want to be a music major. Where's the songwriting class? Show me to the pop lyric professor." I was kind of forced to become an English major, so that's what I did. My second year, Cal showed up, and he was a trumpet player from LeGrand. And actually, we discovered that we both wanted to be songwriters pretty quickly, and the first time we sat down to talk and jam and play guitar, I could actually play guitar better than he could. But that was the only time that ever happened. So Cal and I kind of reinforced each other, and we bounced our songs off each other. We found the cutest girl we could that can sing, and we put her in the group. So we had a folk trio. So it was the late 60s. It was very important to have a folk trio. But the songwriting process for me at the time was very much a struggle. I would perseverate over a line of lyrics for about a week and a half and then decide that it wasn't any good. And in the original vision, this was going to be easy, the whole songwriting thing. And it wasn't turning out that way. But by my last year of school, my senior year of school, I was again getting restless. This turns into a theme. And I was kind of slammed up against this, difficulty with the songwriting. And I discovered right at that point that I had a brilliant remedy for that kind of impasse and that kind of, stuckness. I left town. So I went from Portland then to Istanbul, Turkey, on an overseas program. Now, I was finishing up school, doing overseas study, but I also managed to get myself hired by a local theater in Istanbul, playing guitar in a Turkish production of Hair. All in Turkey, 1971, baby. This kind of stuff went on back then, right? Val came over at some point, and she got in the cast and learned how to sing in Turkish. She had no idea what she was singing, but kind of a phonetic thing. There she is, yeah. And phase one in the songwriting process looked like this. I would have these brilliant ideas. I was obsessed with this, you have to understand, because I thought it was all going to unfold and be a breeze. And I'd have these lyric ideas and song ideas, and I'd put them in a notebook. I put down 2 or 3 lines, and then I'd close it, because I knew if I continued to write that it would never match the pristine image of that song in my head. So I chose to kind of live in the fantasy instead of the reality, and I was, filling up notebooks full of bits of songs. Well, after hair folded, Turkish hair folded, yeah. I told Val that I needed to travel and find my muse, and she pretty much had enough of me at that point. So she said, "Great, you go that way, and I'm going to go to Paris and go to theater school." So she went off, and I went up to. I ended up in Germany, joined a band up there that kind of traveled, played a month in different towns in Austria and Switzerland, called Chubby Dexter and Company, and I actually brought some visual aids. I was still, still convinced that there was a quick. I was missing something. There was a way to get to this songwriting that was just like a breeze. And I decided, I don't know where this came from, but I decided that I needed to work on my image, and that if I looked like a songwriter, maybe that would fool everyone. So I grew out a white boy's afro, and I walked around, with my head down and my black guitar case, looking depressed, because that's a struggling artist, right? That's what you do. You get a case of the crabs. That's mandatory, right? Oh my God. It's 1970. Come on, At age 24, I wound up in Bangkok, Thailand, with this band. We were playing 7 nights a week in the Sheraton Hotel there in Bangkok, and I had the image thing down. My life was international travel, playing rock and roll, working nights, had my days free, parties, drugs. I was meeting lots of women, and it looked like the ideal lifestyle. But ironically, inside I was extremely unhappy during that period, because the songwriting dream was coming unraveled. It was starting to fall apart, and that was the most important thing to me. So it was time to employ my remedy for when things get really difficult and stuck. It's time to leave town, yeah. So I went to California, but I went by way of Hong Kong, because I was missing this tool. And in Hong Kong, at the duty-free shop, I bought a 4-track, Simul-Sync 2330 TAC tape recorder. You know what I'm talking about. $473 plus shipping. What a deal, man. What a deal. So I met the tape recorder in Los Angeles, moved in with some friends. That we had a kitchen with the kitchen in one end and the recording studio at the other end of the kitchen. And I got a job playing cover tunes at Tony's. It may still be there on Redondo Pier, but I was playing cover tunes 5 nights a week, and then teaching myself multi-track recording during the day. And I was actually beginning to finish tunes. This tool helped. And I was writing jingles, and I didn't really play them on the gig because I wasn't sure that they were any good. So I was a little shy about my own material. The next phase in the songwriting dream was write a couple of pop hits, get them on the radio. And I knew if I was going to get the songs on the radio, I needed to take them up to Hollywood on my little cassette demo and knock on the door of the music publisher or the record executives and say, "Here's my stuff." Well, the whole idea of that scared the crap out of me. I wasn't about to go and PR myself because I didn't really believe that the songs were that good. They probably weren't. They might have been. A couple of them might have been. At any rate, I was stuck again. And so it was time to leave town. But about this time, 2 things happened. My girlfriend at the time got pregnant, and Cal called from Portland. And, you know, here's how the conversation went. Cal said, hey, what are you doing? I said, I'm in L.A. Playing music 5 nights a week. I'm writing songs. I got a recording studio, and, you know. Sounded good, right? And so he says, well, why don't you come up to Portland? I'm putting a killer band together, and you could be the lead singer. And I said, I'm there.
Let me think about that for... Okay.
Yeah, okay. 1976. Pulled into Portland, Oregon. It was raining. Here was my thinking, though, at the time. Cal was really good writer, player. When I left 6 years prior to that, I figured he'd be dynamite by now. And I figured all I had to do was like attach myself to him being his band, and we both instant success. Now, everybody thinks that when they put a band together. Otherwise, you'd never do it, right? But I ended up not being a good musical fit in that band, and they wanted to play fusion and actually practice and get better at their instruments. I pretty much wanted to write Rockin' Robin and retire, you know. That was my game plan, you know. So Cal got selected to deliver the pink slip, and he came over and said, well, you're out of the band. And it was crushing. It was a very, you know, it hurt my pride. And actually, Cal and I didn't talk to each other for several years after that. It was a big hurt, but I was actually somewhere relieved because the pressure and the frustration of music and the songwriting, which had kind of just reached a peak, was gone. So, but the realities were, I was now a father to a baby girl. I was working for a property management company as a maintenance man. So I was fixing toilets and people's torn up linoleum. And I was pretty sure I was the only maintenance man in Portland with a bachelor's degree from Lewis and Clark, which the other guys on the crew found quite amusing. My self-esteem was at a pretty low ebb at that time and kind of sinking. The cocaine cured that. For very short periods of time. It was the 80s, right? That's what we did. But about this time, Val came back to town, and she had 3 daughters. I had one. We put our clan together and did the only sensible thing. We wrote a musical. So then we had even less money. But I'd made the mistake of telling her that I wanted to be a songwriter probably one night when we were drinking, and she said, well then, write some songs, dickhead. So we wrote this musical, Cinderella Butterfly. It was a lovely children's story.
It was awesome!
Yeah. All the characters were bugs in the Cinderella story. But, you know, I really wanted Val to like me at the time, and so I think that was a lot of my motivation. 1985, we got married. We meshed the children, which was good and bad, and we dealt with the realities of, you know, parenting a step family, and that's another story. We'll set that over there for now. But the songwriting thing and the music thing had collapsed, and I needed to get a real job. We had, you know, a house and kids, and so. Probably one of the most fortunate things that ever happened in my life. I got a job with the help of some friends, Cal being one of them, at Rex Recording. And I was in heaven. I was surrounded by tape recorders. This was my milieu. And they gave me a paycheck. Wow, man. It's like unheard of. I was pretty sure I'd banished the songwriting dream. It was gone. And the guitar went under the bed for 7 years. I didn't play guitar. And that would have been fine, except the lyrics and the killer song ideas would still pop into my head. It was like, what? Go away. Well, Val kind of saw my struggle with this, and for my 45th birthday, she gave me a little red book called The Artist's Way. And for those of you that know, this is a very short, condensed course in creative writing. And it was what I needed. I needed a mentor. I needed a map. I needed some information here. And I learned two very important things from this book. One, the little voice in your head, the little critic voice that's going, good, bad, shut him up. Duct tape his little mouth shut, put him over there. And then the other thing, the mandate that I had imposed on myself of write the killer pop tunes and live on the royalty checks. How the voice of the universe knew about copyright law, I never did figure that out. But take that other, kind of mandate off the writing process and put that over there with the critic and just write, which is what I did. And shortly after that, I finished enough tunes to record my first CD, The Cheese Stands Alone. For those of you that know me, it's such an apt title. And there are a few left. It's a classic now, right? It's on the merch table. It's really expensive. There's just a few left. But eventually, Cal and I reconciled. And I don't know if I ever told you this, but it took me a while to understand that Cal had delivered a message that was difficult but extremely important to me, which was, maybe you don't want to earn your living as a musician. And that proved to be, a freedom and a relief, and I've always been grateful for that. So, in conclusion, we all have dreams. I think we all kind of get some crazy notions. We all have demons. My Ace Tracy now lives in my head, and he pops up now and then and says things like, "Hey, bird legs, where's the royalty check?" I said, "Thank you for sharing, Ace." But here are a couple of things I'd like to leave you with. These fall under the category of things that took me 35 years to learn. There is no easy way. There is no shortcut. You really need to put in the time and put in the work to become good at anything. And there's a very interesting book I read a while back called Talent is Overrated. That's a suggested reading on that topic. The other thing it took me 35 years to learn was that any creative endeavor requires that you are able to forgive yourself, that you're able to be kind to yourself and to kind of accept whatever it is that you elicit out of your creative self, because not all of it is going to be killer pop tunes that generate royalty checks. Some of it's going to be crap. You got to write it, you got to let that go and keep writing, and then eventually you'll write a good one. Cal and I had an interesting talk just last week about recognition, and this has to do with the final aspect of the original dream, which was be on the radio. And I thought about that a lot, and with respect to recognition, I came up with this. If writing and singing songs is simply about being heard and appreciated, then the size of the audience is important only to the ego. Forget the radio. I really like playing here at O'Connor's because I feel heard and I feel appreciated.